sale. One thing we don't have that we were about to have last year, but COVID kind of got in the way of it. eh, We sort of have it with Norwich Meadows Farms. We don't have a food hub or a food distributor who can take products that are grown here, whether it's meat or vegetable products, and get them to high paying markets downstate. So we see this happening a little bit. I think Shane knows about Sova Farms. So Sova Farms and Norwich Meadows Farms, which work together, they both buy eggs and lamb and other products locally, and then they take them downstate and market them where the markup is dramatically higher. And so we probably, to the extent that we can, want to support these efforts to you know create a food hub where farmers can bring their food in to a centralized location, sell it to Sova, or take advantage of those shipping opportunities and marketing connections downstate and on the eastern seaboard. And so I don't know if that appears anywhere in our bullets, but I think that that's just probably the most important thing that's going to develop over the next few years to increase markets for people who want to do agriculture in Chenango County.
I don't believe we addressed a hub like that as a marketing tool.
Not specifically, because on the screen, we just said expand access to regional markets with central New York to the eastern seaboard. We tried keeping these very general so that.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, if that's fine.
That's actually the model that Caskin Farms use that are presently located in Green, and they sell chickens. They produce them up, or they raise them up here and then take them down to the city and sell them.
Okay. The other thing I saw interesting was on page 6, was the graph that showed the median cost to provide public service for each dollar of revenue raised. For each dollar raised, residential got $1.16. Agriculture received 37 cents and business 30 cents. And those numbers have changed just a little bit from a number of years ago when I saw them. I know Kirk Slaper used to say, I thought it was like the residential received $1.30 versus farm, which received 28 to 30 cents. I had you look back, see where the numbers came from in the USDA. Oh, comments. I get my written pages. I think that's about all I had. Does anyone else have anything they want to say or changes they want to make? Not, well, I think not in our plan, but one of the things I attended or watched a meeting on solar. And that was a week and a half ago. I think it was a Monday, and I did print off a sheet about it.
So actually, it's in a different section of this plan. There is a section about solar and energy.
Okay.
Yep. We just haven't got there yet with you guys.
Yeah, it's just the next part.
Next part?
Yeah.
Okay.
Been trying to get it in little small pieces to make it easier for everybody.
Okay, so we'll be seeing more on that.
Next month.
Okay. Page 8, which I don't know what is in this one, but I highlighted an area. The American Farmland Trust found the loss of farmland increases the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. I thought that was an interesting point that we highlighted. That, this is why we need farms to create better air. And I guess they're seeing that in other places.
So where is that in the,
Under environmental,
Just above the current conditions and trends in agriculture.
okay.
Yep.
Yeah, and so I don't know if we want to put this in the plan, but I think that's going to be going hand in hand with what Terry was talking about with solar, is that, there's probably, going to be an incentive for farmers to, store away carbon based on their style of farming, right? And then, you can, what they call sequester carbon by just getting more organic matter in your soil. And then probably also might also be some tree planting, other economic incentives for farmers to store carbon. So I don't know whether that's, that's going to be an economic opportunity. I'm still trying to find it. So it's right above there.
it's page.
It's on-
7, I
Yeah,
believe.
page 7 or 8, somewhere around there.
Okay. Well, I will, I don't want to slow things down, but I do expect, this is part of a conversation that Ken and Patrick Ryan have been batting around related to, environmental impacts and global warming impacts of farming. And so I think you're going to see a lot of incentive for farmers to sequester carbon, and probably there'll be economic incentives. So that'll be interesting to see. But anyway, I'll leave it at that.
Someplace I saw that the crops do a better job of converting carbon dioxide to oxygen than your wood plants, because they're grown, they do their job, then they're used through animals or some other source to break down, and so that makes them more efficient as far as carbon dioxide sequestration. So that's why the crop is a good way to keep it. If we can keep open land, growing crops, producing food, it's a good way.
Well, and so there's one thing here, and I again sort of feel apologetic for bringing it up. So when the American Farmland Trust is finding that as farmland is lost, it increases the amount of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. They're not talking about a situation in like Chenango County when the farmland is lost in Chenango County, it turns into forest, which is actually taking a lot of carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere. So when our fields grow up into a forest, all that carbon that it takes to make those trees and their root systems comes out of the atmosphere. When it's increasing carbon dioxide in a place like California or Long Island, where you take farm fields and you turn them into subdivisions. So, it's just a little bit of a different situation for us, but you can do with it what you want.
Okay. Other comments? What's our homework for next time, Colleen?
I will, if you all feel confident that this part is done, then I'll send you part 3 of it, which is the last part. And then read over that and bring, but if like you're reading that and you think of something, oh, even back in part 1 or part 2 of another comment, you're welcome to bring up any part at any point.
Can you hear that on screen, Colleen's comments,
Your homework is part 3.
which will be sent to you?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else to come before us as far as move on to privilege of the floor? Shane? You're
Yeah.
on the end.
You forgot Ag Development Council.
Oh, Ag Development Council. Ken?
Okay, well, I think there's a lot of the new interest that there's a lot of interest in looking at how farmers can help their bottom line by doing things like leasing their hunting rights, promoting recreational use of their property. through maybe a rental cabin or something like that. So that's over and above the normal stuff that they've been doing, but that's an interest of that group, is looking at outdoor recreation and how that can work to help farms be more viable. The other thing that's come up, it's going to be going before the ADC, is these solar farms are looking at sheep sheep production to, to kind of go on underneath the solar panels, and that's a growing industry, is grazing sheep under those panels. So we've got an application for a grant of the Evans to put sheep, start a project to put sheep under their farm. So that's something that's going on around the state, because sheep can go in and graze in around those those panels and do it a lot more easily than someone can, weed whack it and bush hog it. So that's an interesting thing, that it could be a growing industry around the state. So, and then it bumps into another issue that we have talked about multiple times, is it's hard to find a place where you could get sheep slaughtered, much harder than it is for dairy animals. So slaughter is an issue for them. So anyway, that's it for ADC.
Okay. Talking about solar, I was thinking about that the other day and I wonder how you could incorporate solar panels and do crops underneath them, like grow hay or something to keep it mowed. But you'd have to have at least a certain amount of width to get back and forth in order to harvest that crop. But it could keep it mowed off.
It has to be mounted pretty high.
And then, yep, they'd have to be mounted so you get through. But how can we reduce the footprint on land? That was my thought.
I think one of the things that we've been working on in our office a few times is trying to get solar panels on landfills or places that aren't being actively farmed, like trying to use those other areas that are like not really Superfund sites, but already contaminated basically. And one of the things we're working on now, Colleen's working on, it, is the climate smart communities and clean energy communities in our hazard mitigation plan. So all these things are going to kind of all be incorporated within this plan and the other plans to try and, have a bigger picture of all this together.
I mean, I think that's a good point. And like Terry and I think probably would have the same concern. You hate to see a solar farm going up on perfectly flat, gravelly loam, prime agricultural land. And maybe our plan should reflect that, solar farms would be well located, like the Evans's one, which like on open hillside that probably is not ever going to graze animals anymore, but it could, with the possible exception of sheep, put it on a hillside, a south facing hillside that's not a prime agricultural soil, and which is probably about to grow up into woodlot anyway, and then you can graze sheep underneath it. But that's a concern. The amount of these solar, I calculated, in order to make the solar that they want, you'd have to take a 2-mile swath from Albany to Buffalo, and cover it with solar panels to get the amount of electricity they're talking about generating. So it's just going to be a massive amount, a lot more of these that maybe we expect to see. And that could be a real opportunity, but it could also be a real problem if they're putting it on prime ag land. So
Yeah, I'd like to add a little bit to what Ken just said. Typically, the solar farms are looking for property that is adjacent to 3-phase electric. And that is rarely found on those lands that Ken described. Unfortunately, sheep do graze well, and they're a great asset to keep the grasses down. But Terry, mowing is something that they don't want to see, because it increases the dust or particle distribution which lands on the photocells. Those are two things I got from talking with the people who plan on building solar farms in Afton?
Well, I know Guilford had a company that was looking to put a solar panels in Guilford. And I guess there's been a setback now. It's the cost of hooking up to NICEAG. It's kind of overly expensive and therefore they're kind of on hold right now. So we aren't seeing the solar panels in Guilford yet.
There's about 7 in progress in the county right now.
There's 7.
So do we have maps, Shane, of three-phase lines through the county? So we have a sense where these things are likely to develop?
We do, actually.
That would be interesting to see at the next
I-
meeting.
And I'm pretty sure, I'm not positive, don't quote me, but I think that's in section 3 of the plan, or can be.
Okay, well, it just,
Map, 3-phase, but I couldn't read it on my
Yeah.
printout.
We do have maps. I remember a few years ago, I was on Google Street View going around the entire county, looking up at the power lines, and we've actually found there are 3-phase lines, maps of them. The problem with those 3-phase line maps is that because they're considered a security risk, those lines aren't
Oh.
always necessarily put exactly where they are. So you kind of have to have like a little bit of a buffer of where they are. It's not perfect.
yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, that would still give us a rough idea, one, of how many there are. I mean, I was surprised to see one of these farms of very large, I mean, I don't know, maybe very large is overstatement, but it's probably 30. I mean, they're major investments of infrastructure. And, you know, maybe it's on a total of maybe 50 acres, 100 acres between Cincinnatus and Marathon. And it's like, wow, this is, you know, these things are springing up all over. They have a lot of economic impact. And it's kind of interesting to think, okay, well, here's where they could be and here's where they couldn't be. And I don't know whether it's our role to say, hey, you know, here's a place where it's going through this field in German or McDonough or wherever, you know, this would be a good place for you to consider because it's got 3-phase, it's got really open, and it doesn't have a lot of ag value. So it's a really interesting topic, probably going to be one of the most significant develops in agriculture in Chenango County in the next decade or two.
What we've kind of seen happening is the properties are usually around 50 acres and they're 5 megawatt properties. So right now there's 1 in German, 2 in Green, potentially 1 in Coventry, I think 3 in Norwich. And that's the ones I can think of off the top of my head.
Well, that's a lot right there.
Yeah, and the one in Guilford, that one's kind of gone off the radar.
Right.
And, you know, we get calls every now and then, about, you know, even residents. Do you have any contact with these solar companies? We'd like to rent our land. So, I mean, there's
Right.
potential for.
Ken Ryan has a question.
I would check out that 3-phase requirement. That's new to me, and the panels certainly don't produce 3-phase. Is somebody telling us that knows what they're talking about?
So if it's a commercial installation, you have to have 3-phase power.
Oh,
If it's a residential, you do not.
okay.
So it's basically because of the amount of electricity they're producing. So as you get up to a certain level, you have to have 3-phase power to get that into those lines.
Just wanted to be sure rather than be
Nope,
embarrassed.
you have to have 3-phase power.
Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, it just makes it real interesting to see. You just see those lines across the county and you can say, okay, well, here's where it's going to develop and here's where it's not going to develop. And here's the potential.
Just for reference too, if in case you don't know how to identify those, if you look up at an electric pole, there's 3 lines going across. That's the 3-phase power. So it's not those big high tower lines. Those, yes, they're 3-phase, but those are the actual transmission lines. Those aren't what they're looking for. They're looking for the lines going up and down like Route 12 with the 3 lines of power on them.
Guilford, I've only got 2 lines past me, so I'm not 3-phase, but on the county road, you've got 3-phase.
Mhm.
Well,
Okay.
just to, okay, this won't take long, and then the requirements for wind and 3-phase, or is that just a whole different ball of wax?
That's a whole different one. So they need, obviously, because they're much larger, they're looking at like 100 megawatt power. they need those transmission lines. And that's, you know, one of the reasons they're in Guilford is they have those
Right.
big lines. But yeah, they still need 3-phase.
You know, one thing I didn't do when I first started is to see who we have on the screen. I can see Ken and
Oh, it's
John.
Ken Smith, John Lawrence, Rob DeClue, and a 548 number, which I'm assuming might still be Rob DeClue, but I'm not positive.
Okay,
That's me.
thank you. And I don't know if you can see who we've got here, but Stan and Marge, myself, Ken, Colleen and Shane and Nancy in the background. Okay, privilege of the floor. Shane.
Oh, no, I said what I had to. We're good.
Okay. Colleen, any comments that you'd like to share with us? Ken Ryan, we missed you last meeting.
Well, I was sitting in my recliner. What do you think of $14 beans and $7 corn after all these years of the Midwestern farmers starving out there?
It's great selling it, but you know, feed prices murder right
Yeah.
now.
Yes. And the farmers like Tread Place that sold his just before I went up. He's just boiling.
I bet he is.
But big combine sales are already up something like 35 or 40%. Large tractor sales are up by some huge number. I think it's doing the country a world of good when the grain farmer all across the country is finally getting a decent, fair price for his product.
Okay,
Which then crushes the dairy industry who's using it for feed.
my last load of feed, 10 ton of feed was up $1,000 over what it was in November. It's $1,000 a load more.
Yeah,
Extra income.
it's a very tricky thing. And I don't know, where are we with privilege of the floor? Ken, are you done?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I'll just segue from him. You know, it's the grain prices, yeah, have been kind of really going up. And that doesn't hurt dairy farmers when dairy prices track them. And so I don't, you know, I did not look, I looked at the corn and soybean prices the other day, and they've just been like on a curve like that for those who can see me. And Terry, what's happening with dairy prices? Do you see a trend?
Yeah, depressing. It's depressing because the futures, it's creeped up a little bit and then it dropped.
Right.
Back the first year. We're down to the futures market, I think is around 15, the upper 15 to low 16s right now for class.
So, yeah. So
And my milk check that came yesterday, the pay price was $17 and $17.60, I believe. And that doesn't quite pay all the bills this month.
right.
And
Well,
then
we had
when
Go ahead.
we got for the over order price or over base price, that took another $800 and some off my milk check.
Well, we had this discussion briefly yesterday and in the soil and water meeting. And so just the interesting part about that, I mean, the soybean and corn prices are up because of international sales. And as I was telling John's committee yesterday, the average person in China only eats about 6% of what the average person in America does. But if they just ate 10% of what we did for dairy, it would increase the sale of dairy by 21 billion pounds a year. So, you know, it's really an international market, however you want to slice it. And so the milk price is going to be determined by what happens in China and the rest of the world in terms of their dairy consumption. We could see prices go up in dairy the way they've gone up in corn and soybeans if people start to eat more pizza and yogurt and milk around the world. And so that maybe that will happen. So that's the uncertain. Switching to an entirely different topic, immunizations for COVID-19 for agricultural workers is something that's coming up. And agricultural workers are kind of in the next tier after you get your emergency workers done. They were very interested in getting farm workers, especially farm workers that live in dormitories. Maybe they work in a dairy, maybe they work in a crop farm around the state or an apple farm. And they want those folks immunized. They want all farmers immunized. And so, we're working with farmers and with ag organizations to help get people awareness about immunization. We don't want to try and convince anyone to get immunized, but so there are plans afoot to create opportunities for ag workers to get immunized in Chenango County. Any feedback from this group about how they'd like to see that happen or not see it happen in terms of how to roll it out and how not to roll it out? Okay, I hear rustling from Rob, but that's crickets otherwise. So there's not much. There's a couple of different plans for basically mass inoculation. So there's some ways, thoughts about how to spread that out around the county, maybe in churches, maybe in a large centralized parking lot. And no interest in trying to twist people's arms into getting immunizations that don't want them, but just to make it easier for people who do have immunization. So you'll probably be hearing more about that. And that's all I have for now.
Marge, any comments?
A couple, I guess, on a variety of things. We got here late. I apologize if I. You hear me with this thing?
For some reason, those aren't working, but they can hear you. We've got, yeah, there's a microphone right here that they can hear.
I hear you. We hear you.
Okay. We, in one of our travels, we had to go to Indiana here a few years ago, and we drove past the large factory who had their solar farm, had a huge solar farm in their parking lot. The cars were parked underneath it on blacktop. So maybe we could put a solar farm down in Walmart, and that's already used up, and we could electricity and park the cars both. The other thing, you were talking about Chobani and doing buying directly from the farmer. Farmland's tractor trailer heads east once or twice a day, every day, and back west when they get empty. So when they are buying from the big boys directly somehow, because Farmland is trucking up to Chobani every day.
Maybe way home.
Maybe way home and maybe just going back empty and after more, because the way trucks go by all day and night.
So
Shelby.
which and I can hear you mostly. So I hear trucks are going by. Yeah, there's a very steady truck traffic for Chobani. I see the Alney trucks. And which one are you seeing, Marge?
Farmland Farms.
Farmland.
Farmland.
Oh, Farmland. Okay, that's
interesting.
Yeah, and so maybe those guys are selling directly, because I thought that, and they are milking. They're like a conglomerate. They're milking multiple thousands of cows, correct?
No, not Farmland.
Okay, what are they milking?
New Venture.
What's that?
New Venture.
She said New Venture is who you're talking about.
Well, how big is Farmland, or the one that you're talking about?
They're big, and they have a farm in Lakeland, and
Yeah.
main farm is in Onondaga County, right on Route 8, right off of Route 80. Near New Venture Farms, and you look at their barns, you're looking at Toggenburg.
Right, okay, well, but their cow numbers are measured in the thousands, correct?
I would guess a couple thousand maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
They're big.
Yeah, that was what I heard, that that there were some larger farms that were able to sell directly when Chobani changed their contract with DMS.
And the other thing is Chenango County is hosting the New York State Dairy Princess for the next year. Our own Shelby Benjamin competed this week, Tuesday, and was crowned New York State Dairy Princess.
All right.
She was one of the 12 candidates at the meeting. Did you watch it, Mark?
No.
I watched it on TV. It was done virtually. Shelby was one of the 3 speech winners. She was one of the 7 finalists. And the 7 finalists had to answer a question. If you were to set up a virtual tour for a classroom, what 3 points would you make? And all 7 girls mentioned the fact that if they did a tour, they would mention how a farmer is sustainable through the care of the cropland, how they take care of their dairy cattle so that they are as healthy and have the best lives they can have. And number 3, milk has 9 essential nutrients, which you get from milk. And those were the points that all 7 girls made. And that's the point that American Dairy Association does with the Dairy Princess. That, you know, those are the points that they want to make. And, you know, Marge brought in Dairy Princess. I just looked, I get an email with a dairy checkoff, and it said fluid milk online sales increase 123% in 2020 due to the pandemic. Because people are home, they're not out, therefore they're buying milk to eat it, drink at home.
So, what was the, is it just online sales or is it beverage milk sales?
It's this stated online, but it said causing 123% increase in milk sales online to nearly $500 million. And, but it's, I think you're seeing a lot more milk sales even in stores because, you know, people aren't going out to eat. They've got to have the milk at home. And therefore they aren't buying soft drink and other juices.
That and they're home depressed, eating more ice cream.
Yeah, so. Marge, I stole from you.
No, that's okay. The only other thing, Ken mentioned the COVID. Vitamin D, it keeps showing up in the research as being a good thing to have a good supply of in your system if you don't want to get COVID or if you get it and you want to recover. And where do you get vitamin D? The best place is in milk and dairy products.
Okay.
Or sunshine.
Sunshine.
Well, we know we're not getting any of that.
Now, Ken, we get a lot of sunshine if you go outside. It just may be covered with the cloud.
It's filtered.
Well, yeah, right. It's pre-filtered.
Stan?
I guess I don't have anything.
Okay. John, do you have anything you want to share with us?
Yes, yes, I do.
Good.
From the soil and water meeting yesterday, NRCS, EQIP sign up is still going. EQIP, Elena has a new erodible land tool that they are eager to use. Don't ask me exactly how it works, but if you happen to have a conversation with NRCS, ask them how that erodible land tool is working. It's a computer-based program. There are 2 upcoming beginning farmer webinars. The first one will be March 4th, 12 to 2 p.m. And the next one will be March 24th from 12 to 1 p.m. And it's contact, if you're interested in having anybody participate in these webinars, the link has been given to Katie at Soil and Water, so you can get a hold of Katie at Soil and Water, and she'll have the link. You could also contact Elena at NRCS. FSA, still making payments for production loss. They are still making the payments. Some of the payments have been held up because of an administration change. I guess when you have a big administration change federally, it slows up a bunch of payments to farmers, go figure. Price of corn and soybean is very high now. We touched on that. And you can still sign up for the 2021 crop year Ag Risk and Loss Program through FSA. And
I think
that's,
the date's March 15th. You gotta do that by.
I believe you're right, Terry. But Brian at FSA would be the person that can give you the most up-to-date information on that.
Okay, anything else?
That's it.
Thank you. Rob?
No, nothing from my source. Thank you.
Is there anything else to come before us? Entertain a motion to. Ken, turn. I can see it in his eyes.
So moved.
All seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Bye.
Aye.
And we'll see you next